Have you ever wondered what kind of person could take you through a time travel experience in Scotland, the Versailles Ball in France, and the ISIS experience in Egypt? I know someone who has done all of those things and has more in the booking, and so today I have a really special guest I'm excited for you guys to listen to, and we can find out all the things and skills and life experiences that make up this kind of amazing person.
I want to meet this person. She sounds amazing. She's awesome.
Welcome to the Crystal Zinn Podcast. I believe our bodies are a living map of the entire universe. All the answers reside within. Remember, you are sovereign, whole, and infinitely valuable. And the best gift we can give to the world is our own healing. Join me as we explore holistic tools, spiritual practices, and paradigms that are shifting the way people experience life, business, and relationships. I love to share education on the most recent medical research and cutting-edge technology on anatomy, neurology, trauma, development, and more to give us a foundation in understanding how to align, utilize, and upregulate our physical systems. Ultimately, this podcast is a witness and support to people on their journey of remembering, an inspiration for all of us to keep going, and a reminder that we are not alone. So welcome to the Crystal Zinn Podcast. I'm especially excited about Season 2 because of the guests that I have got in store for you guys. So today I have with me my actually newer friend, April. Welcome, April.
Thank you.
I'm so excited you're here. And I want to tell you all about April, but like my listeners are used to, and if you're new, we do this at the beginning of every podcast. We're just going to tune in, which is a beautiful opportunity for us and for you, wherever you are in your day, to take a pause and reconnect to the present moment. So if you're in a place where it's safe to do so, go ahead and close your eyes with us. Notice if that first breath was an inhale or exhale. And then relax your jaw. Drop your tongue to the back of your throat or bottom. And ask, what's here for me right now? What's coming up? What do I need to remember? And then let the belly out when you inhale. And just a gentle relaxation when you exhale. Notice the pads of your fingers and the parts of you that are pressing into the surface beneath you. I have everything I need within. I can call on anything I need when I need it. And the true gift is this moment. I give myself permission to be fully present. Observe 3 more of your breaths, allowing more and doing less on each breath. Cultivating a feeling that all is right in the world with you right now. When you feel complete, blink your eyes open and come back. Okay.
All right.
Now we'll get the good conversations.
That was delicious.
So I first just want to say that part of my new theme and moving through life is more of going with the flow, and it's in a deep-seated trusting state, which I'm not perfect at and will continue to work at, but it's something I have put as a top priority, especially in doing what you guys might know as my business or my podcast or things like that right now. And it was in this very spirit that I met the most magical person that I'm so excited to introduce you to, which is April. We met a couple weeks ago at a luncheon for business women. And I had said this about her, and I gave her this compliment when she showed up today, that there was one woman, and it was her, in that entire luncheon I could feel was so grounded and sovereign with her energy. The comments she made were so allowing. She had just showed up in a really powerful way, and I continued to notice her throughout the luncheon. And then it was over, we connected on the socials and had been talking. So that's one of the reasons why I'm really excited. What I do know about her is she holds women's retreats. She's excited about starting her podcast. She's done lots of things in business. She owns several hair salons, and is just a really successful businesswoman, also grounded in a spiritual journey and growth, and has a lot of offerings as far as coaching and spirituality go as well. So, April, I would love for you to introduce yourself and add to my list and add to some of the things maybe I don't know.
Yeah, that was a beautiful introduction. Thank you. Yeah, I think the number one thing about me is I'm a seeker, and I'm always just looking for the next layer of growth and depth within myself, within others. I live my life through imagination and curiosity. And so I'm always just open to, like, my word for next year is magic, to allow more magic in. And I've seen some really magical things. So magic and faith is kind of how I operate now, which has been very different from the damaged masculine hustle culture that I grew up in and that I came from and that I made my businesses successful in. And now I'm in a rebirth process of how can I lead from the feminine and allow flow and be in alignment and let things unravel as they will, because they're going to anyways, without me controlling or manipulating or holding on to, just like, just letting it be what it's going to be and being with it. And so thank you for that compliment, because that's something I have worked a lot on, is just how can I be at peace and in presence in the midst of chaos that's always certain to be there in this world at large. So
yeah, definitely. I want to start off with something really interesting about you that grabbed everybody's attention. Will you tell us about those retreats that you were holding and maybe what inspired those? Like, I kind of want to know how that came about, because it felt like it was something everyone was like, oh my gosh, I want to go. I wish I had thought of that. I want to do that. That's the most amazing idea.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, well, through imagination and curiosity is really how that, but there's always, when you see a lack of a need in the market, and then you're like, why isn't anybody doing this? So I did hair for 20 years, and I specialized in time period hair. And growing up, grew up Mormon, 5 kids. We didn't have a lot of money, so we used to play Russian immigrants and like walk around our house with little outfits and like put on plays. So we've always been very theatrical. So it was just leading me to all of this anyways. But my sister and I, we travel a lot together. She's a very well-known photographer. I did hair and makeup with her. So we would do these styled shoots in these castles. And just one time we went back east to Colonial Williamsburg. And, it's the town where people dress up as if it was that time.
I grew up in Boston.
Oh, okay.
That area.
Yeah. And so I waited in line. I was waiting in line to rent a costume. And I get up there, and I'm 6 feet tall and 230 pounds. So I get up there and they're like, we don't have any costumes that fit you. And I was like, oh, I'm getting fat shamed in this line. I've waited in this line for an hour. And they're like, ma'am, we only have costumes for children. We don't have costumes for adults. No adults want to dress up. I'm like, I do. I was so excited to come out here and dress up in Colonial Williamsburg.
Lady, this is for 10 and under.
Yeah. And I was like, oh, well, you're missing out on a huge market of adults who want to have this experience. And then Outlander came out, and I loved Outlander. I loved everything about it. I love romance novels. I'm always trying to get my husband to narrate romance novels because he has the deepest voice. So I'm like, just say something dirty to me before we go to bed.
read this paragraph.
He could be reading the ingredients, and I'd be like, oh my gosh, I love it. But he's I'm very into romance novels. I loved history. I love time period hair. I love all of that, right? And so my sister and I went to Scotland to do an Outlander shoot with her wedding industry. So she was bringing all these photographers to do this Outlander shoot because it was like really popular, the buzzword, right? And so her and I decided to go on an Outlander tour. And we went on an Outlander tour, and for some reason, nobody else on the tour. It was supposed to be 10 people. It was just me and my sister and this like 80-year-old Scottish guy. And so he took us all over for like 10 hours. He invited us to tea with his wife, and he was just like so much about the history of Scots and all of this. And I was just like, this would be so much better if we got to get costumes and get in front of all the Outlander sites and be in costumes. And then I was just kind of like into the creativity of it. And then I talked to a really good friend of mine, and she was like, oh my gosh, I love Outlander, da 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 da. And I was like, well, I'm thinking I want to do this Outlander retreat, and I want to take people to travel through time. And as soon as I started saying it to her, it just flowed through me. And I was like, oh, we're going to stay in a castle. I'm going to get custom costumes made from Outlander. So I found a seamstress who had all the patterns from Outlander. And actually, when I went out there, they asked me to do hair and makeup because they need like a hair and makeup person in Scotland on Outlander.
Yeah.
I wasn't able to, but like the opportunity presented itself for me to like do hair and makeup for Outlander. And I was just like, oh my gosh, I'm so in flow with this Outlander thing. And then just as the days started coming, I was like, oh, and then we can tie in magic and Harry Potter, and then we can tie in freedom, because I really love, the book How to Do the Work and doing the work and what does the work mean. But I also love how to do the play. And like playfulness is healing too, just as much as like all the hard, deep inner shadow work is. There's also that inner child that's like, I just want to play. And I just want to be imaginative, right? And so, I can see now that all these, like, I bartended for years. I waited tables. Like, I did all this stuff for the wedding industry. So all of those skills came together to help me create this, like, really beautiful once-in-a-lifetime experience. And it was so transformative. I just wanted to do it once. I was like, oh, I'm just going to do this because I want to put my art out there in the world. And then everyone who came was like, this changed my life. They became best friends. They, like, someone who came who had never cried in like 10 years, and they like sobbed because we do this like goddess thing where we all see each other at the end, and it was so spiritual, and it was so like the land and the freedom. And what I love about the Scots is like they would have rather die free men than be under British rule. And like I just feel like that's something lost in our culture. People don't want to fight for anything. They just want to be people pleasers. They're worried if everyone likes them, and that's like not an option that they had. That's not even part of the Scots intuitive, like what they make up, right? Like they're just like, no, you die for your freedom. This is more valuable than being liked on Instagram or whatever. And so I just love that like essence. And so we really tapped into that. And then I started doing Tantra. Me and my husband started doing Tantra, and I started learning about Isis and sex magic. And I was like obsessed. So I started reading all these books. Like I just get engrossed with it. And then I met this amazing woman who's like, oh, I lead these retreats down the Nile cruise to connect to the divine feminine. And I was like, oh, could we go and do some private meditations and some Tantra and like really have it be about connecting to sex magic and like things like that. So we all went on kind of like a test run, and then I'm partnering with a Tantra coach to do another one that's like really more,
and that's the one coming up, right?
Yeah.
Like you're gonna do that one. Yeah.
Yes.
And so then like they come and they do the practices and the spiritual things and the themes which you're so channeling and in tune with and beautiful, and they get to dress up in the costumes, and you can do the time period hair, and you've got a photographer.
Yep.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so my sister's like
such a dream.
Such an amazing photographer, and I did hair and makeup for 20 years. And my other sister comes and does sometimes like somatic body work or foot zoning or massage. People like this one in Versailles, we're doing impressionist painting classes.
Okay.
So it's going to be very much about pleasure, and it's inspired by the book Postia Reclamation from Mama Gina. Changed my life. And so I was like, women need more pleasure. Like, I think I
gifted that book to like 11 women this year.
Good for you. Yeah.
I was like, who didn't read this yet? I will find you. But then they get the ball gowns in that one.
Yeah, so I'm taking a wig making class. Okay. So they're going to be wigs from like Bridgerton. And they're going to be I'm very extravagant.
No, you don't say.
I know, my husband's always like, everything has to be like so extravagant with me. He's like, can't we just do a simple birthday party? I'm like, no, it needs to be Midsummer's Night Dream theme, and everybody needs to come dressed like this, and we're going to reenact this murder mystery dinner.
It's like what you said, though. That is the healing and the play and the reclamation of the inner child. That it's an important piece.
Yeah, and Albert Einstein said imagination is more important than intelligence. Mm-hmm. And I think that's where a lot of people's problems, where they get stuck, is they're like not tapped into their creativity. They're not, since we started grading art, men have been a lot, like Brene Brown does this whole podcast on why men are so angry and why they have so much violence, and it's because they're not tapped into their creativity. And they have such a limited box. So like if they were able to just be creative and have this outlet, just think of the ripple effect of like not having all this pent up anger.
Yeah, I was counseled about that a few years ago when raising my son, and I had read the book Play by Edward, I forget his name, PhD. I can tag it in the notes. We can tag that as well. Where he said that is 80% of when you make the neurological connections or the progression of their learning, it happens during play. That's when your brain is open and flow to do that. And he did mention boys as well, and he did say when they want to set up their like their really complex like constructs and make believe, and it takes up your whole house and part of your backyard. Mm-hmm. For boys especially, it's very important that you don't limit that, because like you said, and neurologically that has a direct correlation to creativity, resilience, and anger. So I'm glad you brought that up. That's so interesting. Anyways, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, you're
still
fine.
Talking about the retreats.
Yeah. No, we're in flow with the conversation.
We are flowing. Yes, but I did want that to kind of come full circle about this retreat thing. Do you feel like that's your Dharma purpose? Like, is that the epitome of putting everything together in your ultimate joy? Is these retreats?
Yeah, I mean, I'm really in flow with it. It's been interesting. I'm definitely in a rebirth process of like I want to do this Mary Magdalene retreat that's in the caves of France, and do all this womb work and womb healing and help women connect to their wombs, and then have like a rebirth ceremony. So after I do my retreat in Versailles, and we're going to go to the Mary Magdalene caves and do like research and kind of like I've been tapping into the energy of Mary Magdalene, because when I left the church, I just was against everything, Jesus, God, Mary, all of that. I was kind of like, no, not for me. And now I'm definitely like healing a lot of those wounds and bringing back in like my spiritual practice of the vibration that they held and the teachings that they had, and tapping into that collective consciousness. So I'm really just in flow with it, but they've all sold out, and I haven't advertised them. I just, like, people who go to them, then they're like, oh my gosh, you have to come on this. And I've traveled since I was 18. I was a nanny in France when I was 18. It was my first plane ride. I'd never left. I've never been on a plane. And I decided when I graduated high school to just go to Versailles and be a nanny. And it was a very tough experience.
I love you.
Man,
I want to be you when I grow up. Are you kidding me? I want to go. I know, but these days I don't know that we would put our 18-year-old on a plane. Just strangers and friends. But oh man, that's so cool. So you do have the experience to travel the world and have that sort of confidence to lend and help women.
Yeah, I backpacked Europe by myself when I was 20. Like it's funny, I never made like a ton of money when I was younger, but I was always like, I will always have enough money to travel, and I always just made it work. Like I went to China, I went to Thailand, like I've been lots of places by myself and done lots of things by myself, which I feel like is really how I learned to navigate my own safety, which was a really important part of my healing process, is for me to find my own safety. And definitely, I don't know now, although we live in a safer time than ever because we didn't have cell phones.
That's true.
I just had a calling card from parents had no idea what was happening.
Yeah, no GPS. I don't know where she is. That's true.
Yeah, not even hardly internet. It was like still wrote letters.
Wow. Oh, I would love to hear more of your thoughts on this beautiful topic that came up earlier about learning how to, the juxtaposition, because I felt like there were two important things that came up that I find so helpful in this journey, which is one, seeing the reason and purpose behind like learning our lessons and going through things that are patterns in a time period, and then how, and like for you, you were talking about working in the world and creating your things, and deciding like about your career and things, and then that juxtapositioned with the flow, like how you can let go and the things kind of materialize, and what the difference is in working with the flow. And then also the fact that that doesn't mean that it's all of a sudden going to be easy and you're going to be living in abundance all the time, because the flow, I think, will also take us into building the lessons and the strength that we need as part of our journey. So I just did a really big circle, and the beginning of that was, how did that change for you working in the corporate world? And I forget what you called it, the masculine hustle.
Mm-hmm.
And
the toxic masculine hustle.
How did that transition into the flow initially?
Well, so I think it's really just my study over the last 7 to 8 years of what is masculine and feminine energy. And so, and healing that inner child of nurturing mother is when you fall off your bike. Nurturing mother's like, it's okay, kisses you, make sure you're okay. And structured father is get back up on the bike, right? And I feel like there's a lot of people who just never get back up on the bike, and I was one of those, or I was doing it in a toxic way of like working so much so that I could avoid all of the trauma that I didn't want to deal with or didn't know that I needed to deal with. And so my journey has been a lot about me finding my own masculine container within myself, because we all have masculine and feminine energies. And then that masculine container, I always think of masculine container as like a bowl that holds, and the oatmeal is the divine feminine and the flow. But like you need the bowl to hold it, or the oatmeal's going to be a mess. And so that's the divine feminine chaos that can be really messy, until you learn to have your own masculine container that like holds it and gives it the structure and the foundation for you to be in flow. So it's like being in flow while being contained. So it's kind of like opposite of what you would think.
Well, it's opposite, right? What I hear most people say,
Yeah.
where you're like, I had to learn the masculine first.
Yeah.
I hear a lot of people say, I was so restricted, I actually had to welcome in and consider accepting the divine feminine. But that is just a beautiful, perfect analogy, because what holds it as you're learning about it.
Well, and like without the bowl, without the oatmeal, the bowl is empty. Mm-hmm. So the oatmeal is like the nourishment. So the divine feminine is the emotions, the nourishment, the nurturing, but without the bowl, the oatmeal is a mess. Yeah. So it's the structure and the containment. So when you learn about polarity in masculine and feminine relationships, is like it's that containment of the emotions, which allows you to still feel the emotions in a healthy way and not shove them down, but not just like explode on people. That's like being uncontained.
Oh, I love that. I had a beautiful example of that this week. Someone did that for me, one of my friends. I needed to feel some emotion, and he held that masculine container, so I felt safe to do it. And it was such a cool repertoire to experience in my body, to be able to have both just like demonstrated metaphorically and literally, like right there in person. And I love that metaphor of the bowl and the oatmeal. So as you're learning about this, then that started translating into your life. Like you're watching this in your life and you're going like, wait a second, how is this working with your salons? I kind of want you to tell them the story of like the magic of waking up one day and deciding I want this, and then getting a call. Like, I just love those stories.
I mean, I've had so many beautiful hard lessons with the owning of my businesses, because I was doing it originally. So I got into it by being in my feminine flow. Okay. So I never wanted. I haven't been a big person who does like 5-year plans, because all the things that kind of they all magically came to me, right? Like I got hired to do Sports Illustrated. I'm a girl from Utah. Like I moved to New York to do hair and makeup in New York. I got a job on Vogue magazine, like working in a bar. Like I was very much in the law of attraction of like things just coming to me, but I would have never had that on my list of like, oh, I don't care about sports. I'm not really into sports.
Yeah.
So like I would have never cared to do that. Yeah. Or like my sister because she got hired as a photographer, I got to do a whole Chanel spread in Harper's Bazaar in Thailand. But like, again, that wouldn't have been on my vision board. So I think vision boards are really good for some people. And I think it's good to have a vision of where you want to be and where you want to go and the energy. But I'm a generator. And so in human design, and I'm like, I have a defined root, but I have like an open heart and throat, meaning like it always can change based on what people need to hear and who I'm talking to. So I can like say this to this group and be like this, show up this way in this group. So it kind of is like a chameleon energy, which I always thought was like really bad. Like, oh, that means I'm being fake. But really it's like my biggest gift. And it's really just like, well, it's undefined. So it's just going to come from my root and my gut of like, I'm flowing to what you need to hear.
Or what the circumstance
calls for. Yeah. And so with my salons, I had been doing hair, and the owner was like walking people around I could tell it looked like he was going to sell them. And my other salon had closed down on me very suddenly. And so I was like, I just messaged him out of fear. And I was like, are you closing the salon? Are you selling the salon? What are you doing? And he's like, I'm franchising it. Do you want to be my first franchisee? I actually think you would be really great. And I was like, I don't have any money. I'm like, I can buy a salon. And then my brother-in-law at the same time, because I was open, and I was like, started trying it on, like, oh, what would that be like if I owned image studios? Like, how would that look? And my brother-in-law called me at the same time and was like, hey, I want to buy this land in Hawaii. Do you and Spencer, my husband, want to invest with me on that? And I was like, well, what about this salon? Is this a better investment opportunity? And he like did the numbers and he's like, this is a much better investment opportunity. Let's do that. So that was very much in flow. And then he bought another salon in Colorado. And he was like, I'll give you, a certain percentage of ownership if you want to come in and help with marketing and help with it's like, you've been a hairstylist for 20 years. Like, you can help people with updos and the bridal industry and all of that stuff. And so he kind of just like offered me this like thing, right? Cool. The lessons of that though were, we bought the salon right before COVID, and it closed down, and it was like losing money instead of like paying me this money that I thought, right? Like, it was this whole big lesson of trust and surrender. And what I noticed is I started controlling a lot more and getting out of the flow I'd always been in that brought me everything. And then I started being like, no, it has to be this way, and like getting really like tight, and like my body started having a lot of pain. And that's where I was like, it had been this like 3-year process of like my shadow of control, and my shadow of like my damaged masculine, and my damaged feminine, right? So me, what it really showed me was I had been being a victim. I had been acting like a victim. I had been blaming everything on my business partner and the economy and COVID, instead of taking responsibility that I had never owned a salon with 52 employees before, and I really didn't know what I was doing at the time. I was a little in over my head.
Yeah.
And instead of just having the pride to like just admitting like, hey, I need to find a mentor. I need to find someone who's done this, because I haven't done this, and that's okay. That's okay that I haven't done this before. Yeah. I want to learn. I'm going to be a student. I'm going to learn how to do this. Yeah. But the number one thing before breakthrough is you have to take 100% responsibility for your part in it.
Yeah.
And that took me some time to do.
As it would. Yeah, I have experienced that as well. And I want to validate your bravery and willingness to move through the path in that way and break through and get better, because that's not easy. And you can take a lot of detours and not have to face that head on. So that's really spiritual warrior material. I don't know that I would have chosen into it either, but one of my teachers, Jules, I was telling you about while we were sitting here earlier, we have some common connections in the healing world. She forced me to do that half a decade ago, probably a little bit, it's probably longer than that at this point, where she didn't let me out after a medicine session until I could journal down how everything that had transpired in the difficult situation I had found myself in was what my role in it was. And more than that, how it was my fault, for lack of a better, you know what I mean, just some NLP therapy. Like, you just take radical responsibility here, or you can't leave.
Yeah.
I want to see it in your notebook. So I don't know that I would have chosen into it, but that was the first time in my life I had learned that was the way out.
Yeah.
Because I left there feeling, what I thought it would do was mean I was a piece of crap. But what I left there with was my sovereignty and freedom.
That's awesome.
And I still have to remember that lesson. That's a beautiful lesson because it comes up on us every day, like that radical.
Yeah, there's different silos, right? So there's different areas of like, I've been really good at taking responsibility over here and over here and over here. And then my shadow is just like, I don't need to take responsibility for this part. This is all his fault.
Except for that.
Except for this one. I'm fine for these 7 things, but this one, that's not me.
Yeah.
For sure.
So you learn those lessons and you work through that, and now you've got a couple salons, a bunch of salons, and you've expanded enough to have those running so that you can do the retreat things. What are you doing in the spiritual world now?
So I did get certified in NLP as well, so neuro-linguistic programming.
Cool.
And what I really loved from that is timeline therapy. So I really picked up the timeline therapy piece, and I do a lot of timeline therapy with somatics. I'm also trained in psychosomatics. So I do a lot of somatic work with that. And then my sister and I will do different healing retreats with drum journeys. We have a sweat lodge on our property, so we do sweat lodges. And I like to have lots of different tools for whatever the situation calls for in whatever container it calls for. So I'm not very structured in that area of I have the structure of my foundations, and I have the structure of my retreats are structured, obviously, but within that realm, I just really am
you can work with your gifts.
Yeah, sometimes
really.
I do goddess retreats. I do we did a whole NLP mirror work using a lot of Louise Hay and rewriting your stories, and so I love it all.
I have a weird question. You tell me if you want to reach this realm in the podcast. So with a lot of those skills and with the things that you've been producing, what type of stuff have you done with past life regression and knowledge and things like that, and what's come up for you? Have you lived? Do you know if you've lived past lives in these eras and time periods, and that's what's kind of fueling a lot of this?
Yeah. I mean, I never really got into past lives a lot because I just wanted to be present in the life that I'm in. But I did, my friend got me an Akashic record reading.
Cool.
And she said I'm a blueprinter, and blueprinters are the most human. They've always been human. So I am a soul who hasn't, I'm not Lumerian or Palladian or any of the others. I've just always been human. So I'm the most human.
You're a human.
I'm a really human
human.
Because I'm the person who created the world and the evolution of humans. That's part of the tribe that I'm from.
Okay.
But I have known about some past lives. I randomly, probably almost 7 years ago, I watched this strange guy. It was a Quantum Leap YouTube video. Okay. And I was oh, that sounds interesting. Because I had the book, Quantum Healing.
Yeah.
And I was reading it, and so it was all about the quantum everything.
Yeah.
And he was he followed me through this thing of I saw this past life that was in France, where I was an aristocrat, and my husband and I had a really good relationship, and we were really close, but I had a lot of influential power because I was a connector, and I had a lot of influence, and I was very high status. And so I was talking about politics, and my husband said something, and I corrected him in front of everybody. I was no, that's not true. It's this. I corrected him.
Okay.
And all his friends were oh, what, your wife just corrected you. And so he, after that, locked me into a sewing room for the rest of my life, and was everything you have is because I gave it to you, and you will not have anything except for what I give you. And so basically took all the power I had away because he was a man and he could do that. So in this life, I'm definitely hyper independent, and so my husband and I are working through like interdependence.
Okay.
Instead of me being like toxically independent,
like a healthy
interdependence of like, I'm whole and complete and I don't need you, and you're whole and complete and you don't need me, but I want to have you in my life, and I like to have you be my healthy masculine, but also know that I can be my own healthy masculine. But I actually did, my friend Michael King, who's in Utah, he's amazing. He does kinesiology. He went back in, and we went back into that past life, and he's like, could there have been another way, since I don't believe past lives happen in the past. I think they're happening at the same time, because time isn't linear in the quantum field. Yeah. And so like it's already happening at the same time as this is happening in a different dimension. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So he's like, could you have just apologized? And the thing is, in the experience that I had previously, I'm very stubborn. I'm an Aries with an Aries rising and a Scorpio moon. So I'm a little intense.
I love it.
And so, like, I saw that, like, my pride of being right kept me from having this beautiful relationship, because we did have a beautiful relationship. Mm-hmm. And that his pride, because, like, he missed me because I gave him so much life. And, you know, he's kind of this boring aristocrat, and I was just like, this goddess who's like, let's do this, right? So I was like, exciting for him. And I went back into a past life regression and like actually just wrote him a letter and was like, I'm so sorry. I realized that everything you've given me, and I took it for granted and didn't realize, like, at this, especially that day and age, for him to give me as much power as he did. Mm-hmm. Women didn't have that. I was very unique. Mm-hmm. And I totally, like, at my expense of my ego of me looking good, made him look bad. And how that wasn't good for both of us. Yeah. Because I didn't care about the unit of him. I cared about me and my ego and looking right. And I could see how I've been like that in the past as well. So it was like a very much like I'm karmically had all these things to come. And that was kind of full circle with my business partners. Like, I cared more about being right than what was like best for the business. Mm-hmm. Until I was like, okay, I just have to have an honest conversation, take responsibility for my part. Yeah. And then we can go on from here. And so in that past life regression, I wrote him a letter, and then he instantly came and got me. And then we made amends.
Amends
in
Versailles.
We made that for 10 days straight.
Sounds like one of your retreats.
Yes. I got back out into the limelight. So
wow.
Yeah, so I do feel like going to Versailles as a nanny when I was 18, had never been on a plane ride. Like, I literally lived a block away from the Versailles Palace. I walked around the Marie Antoinette Gardens every day at 18. And just like the energy there just was so like, I'm home. I've been here before. So then when this retreat came in, it was just like, and I was kind of even feeling, wouldn't that be interesting if everyone who said yes had that past life with me, and we're all here to like heal this past life together.
See, that's what I was kind of hearing from not just what we've talked about here publicly, but the other conversations. I was feeling like what you're doing is karmically so much bigger. And also, I didn't know about the blueprint archetype. Who better to walk people through, you know, those type of experience or reclamations or karmic kind of completions than someone who has been through all the human experiences, someone who is really human.
Yeah.
Can now walk them through these things that you know so much of in your energetic field, or whether we're all living it simultaneously. It's all here with you.
Yeah, my friends always say that I'm the most human person they've ever met, but I attract all the non-humans. So like, I have so many friends that are like fairies and angels, and like, you've definitely got this like ethereal, like,
I was gonna say
angelic, like, you're so not human. And I like knew as soon as I met you, I'm like, oh, I attracted a really cool another non-human, but I'm just so human.
Yeah, because I think that's what it was about you sitting across the table. That is just, it's a beautiful catalytic co-creative type of energy to have that go on, and that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
That's so funny.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, thanks for asking.
I've been learning a lot about that in the last couple of years, and
do you do past life regressions, or?
Yeah, I've done a lot of them, and I've taken my clients through, which is a spiritual gift I didn't go study in the conventional way, which has been the first 35 years of my life, is very go back to school when I need something new, follow all the red tape, get the certifications, pay for all of my things to stay current in NFPT and Yoga Alliance and, you know, like all the things. And that's something that is transmuting in my life right now, kind of just going upside down as all things do, the other paradigm now.
Yeah, because those are old constructs that need to, like, new constructs need to be created, and there's no map.
There's no map. It's new, and it's coming from the inside out, and that's one of the spiritual gifts and skills that I haven't been formally trained on. But I do have mentors and guides and gurus and things like that, and that's something that not only has come up for me, like walking myself through a lot of those things and having people walk me through those and kind of teach me, but something that has naturally come up when I co-create with a client or people who have been coming to me need that or request that. It's also, I was telling you earlier, kind of a fun, like when they show up, I'm like, what is this for me? Because they wouldn't be showing up if there wasn't something for me in it. And I've been honing those skills because people who have been around me lately have needed that. And so it's something I've been just trying to ethically and intuitively and sovereignly weave through.
I love it.
And so I love hearing other people talk about it. I don't know what's true, what's metaphorical. I mean, how can we really, you know, we don't have the curtains completely pulled back, and I don't think any one of us, being in our human experience, can say this is kind of like the end-all construct of what that means, because like in our journeys, if you've peered behind the curtains before, it doesn't really compute like that, right? You don't get to see that and then be like, well, now it all makes sense, I can come back and write a book about it. Like, no, we can help guide people along the way, but that's something I don't know where it completely lies. But I have been, more recently in my journey, as more has been expanded, I'm leaning towards that final explanation, that all things are happening simultaneously, just because of the speed and healing that things can happen in when things are changed in those timelines. It's very simultaneous. It's very instantaneous and miraculous, and so it doesn't seem to be, at least in the time construct that we understand here, in our, you know, where we are in the universe and the density of the time continuum, it doesn't abide by those rules. So what would make most sense in our gravitational time construct, which is funny because I also teach quantum physics in different schools. So how we would have to talk about it is how you said, they're all happening simultaneously. Really, time is bent around density, right? And occurrences and quantum collapses. So I think what it really actually means is, depending on your proximity to the event, that is going to be the construct of perceived time. But I think, to simplify it, it can all be happening at the same time. What do you think? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, in timeline therapy, when we go back, you know, you ask the question, are you willing to release anger today and to be aware of it consciously and release it from your unconscious? And you know that 95% of everything we do is unconscious, and it was created from 0 to 7, and those patterns are a lot of the times generational. So then the next question you ask is, if you were to know when this event happened, was it before, during, or after your birth? And so then if it was before, it was like, was it genealogical or past lives? And so people who are really, really not into it, I always tell them it doesn't matter, because it's all made up. Because the past is made up anyways. So like when you were 5 is just as made up as a past life.
Yeah.
So
you don't need to
it doesn't matter, because it's all made up. The only thing that even 5 minutes ago is made up at this point. The only thing that really matters is, like, in this moment right now, from your timeline, you can go back to your unconscious, because there's an unconscious pattern you're not aware of. So we're talking to the unconscious mind. And I've seen people release that anger from that past life 3 lifetimes ago, and it's just gone.
Yeah, it's
just gone.
It's just about the now.
Yeah.
Where you choose into it now, then you can be free. So whether the truth is it was my 9th great-grandma's 2 times removed and I healed it, or I just released it right now, that's kind of the instantaneousness of it that I've been experiencing.
Placebo still works. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If the sugar pill works, good.
Great.
Placebo is like, my friend studies, she has 2 PhDs in anthropology, and she studies placebo. And I can't remember what exactly it is, so I'll find out and get you the right numbers. But it's like 80% effective or something like that. Placebo effect. So like, your belief your mind, and you know this from your body, like your body will manifest what your mind believes. So if your mind believes that's true 7 lifetimes ago, or if your mind believes like I'm unconsciously doing it now, and either way it's released, why does it matter?
I love that.
Like that's where the magic and curiosity and imagination come in, is like why does it matter to have those? Same with you, like you don't need to have all these constructs of whatever. That's just like validation for other people that are scared, but when people meet you, they can feel your energy and they're like, oh, she's gifted, she's talented. And like I don't care that you have any of that stuff. I care how I feel when I'm with you and the impact that you have on my life. And so like, and there's all these new ways that need to be created, because there's a lot of ways that are clearly not working for a lot of people that are unhealthy ways. And we've been living in a patriarchal society for thousands of years. So new ways constantly need to be created, and someone's got to be the one to pave the new way.
Yeah, the fire
signs.
Why
not you?
You pointed at me, but I pointed at you.
Both of us. Together. In community, in the divine feminine circle, so none of us are alone. That is the new paradigm, is collaboration and connection.
I love that so much, and that was so beautifully said. What April's talking about is, before this, we were talking about in the business paradigm, and I'd love to touch on that while we have a couple more minutes, where I was relating my personal story to her of trying to figure out which paradigm is most aligned for me in business and in life, because I actually think it's all the same thing. And you had just opened my mind to a lot of things that make it not so black and white anymore, and also shift into what can be your own alignment and paradigm, not in those ways. So to what she was referring was just a roadmap of like having to do this specific thing on social media, right, to be successful, and what does success mean, or like this specific roadmap to sell out your retreats or own this land or whatever it is. And those things don't necessarily have to apply or be understood. I had another thought. Do you have more you want to say about that, though? I did want to touch on that, because it's just so beautiful that we can and are creating something and seeing the results rather quickly from stepping out of the paradigm and saying like, oh, you booked all your retreats and didn't have to advertise it on social media, and me saying I really wanted to call in people that could expand and connect with our hearts and just mine some gold out of some ideas of creating this new earth here, and you showed up.
Awesome.
Right, I haven't recorded a podcast since I set that intention out 2 weeks ago.
That's awesome.
And I was just sort of waiting for who would show up, literally.
I'm glad I got the call.
So, I know. Same. Yeah, but it's not an easy task to live in that grounding and alignment and continue to fall back on it and say, this is new, this hasn't been seen or done, and we're going to do this. I forget what comment triggered that when you were talking about, like, this isn't the way it has to be.
Yeah, it's more just like, I feel like when anything gets to be so much in a box, then that like ruins all possibility. And I always love to create from possibility. And I did a lot of landmark and Tony Robbins stuff, and they always like talk about creating possibility, and the best place to create possibility is from a place of nothing. And so just because this is a way that person has found that way to make money, that's great, that works for them. Doesn't mean it's going to work for you. Same thing as, being Mormon or Catholic or Protestant or atheist or vegan or vegetarian or whatever, that works for you. It's none of your business what works for me, unless your business is to teach me how to do that and I'm drawn to that. So like, that's where it just like, I am always in my imagination and curiosity and possibility of like, try it. If it's in alignment and it works with me, it will be in flow and it will be easy. If it's not, I'm forcing it, I'm pushing it, it's not in alignment with me, it's not the right way for me.
That's it. That's a beautiful way to say it. And that is what reminded me of why we talked about that, because we have been told to box in not only who we are, but our offerings and what that's going to look like in the container from start to finish. And when I had told you that my big epiphany was to no longer contain that and write sales pages about it and define my, avatars and all of these things, but to say, the experience is with me. And so if you do feel called to that, I can tell you everything I'm trained in, and we can have intentions and make decisions, but the experience will be to, experience April on those retreats, or book a session with me, which is my only offering right now that I'm doing, and had decided that. And that will just be the experience with me. So whether we do need to address past lives, or we just need to somatically move through the body, or you just need to let some things out, right? Or we do need to shift things karmically, whatever that energy looks like, we don't have to box that in. And can we trust enough that not defining it, right? The undefinition of that is going to prove to be purposeful and fulfilling and success, as we call it. And so far, I would say it is. It always is. What would you say?
Yeah, I mean, and there again, you could be like, what's your definition of success?
Yeah.
Right? So like, your definition of success could look a lot of different things. Not everybody wants to be a millionaire. Not everybody wants to be in the healing space. Not everybody wants to be, some people want to be an amazing mother. Some people want to be a school teacher. Like, so everybody has different needs that meet what their soul came down here to do.
Yeah.
And so I think that's just like getting in touch with your values and your beliefs, and really knowing who you are and what you want and what does success look like for you.
Yeah.
And we kind of talked a little bit about that book, The Soul of Money, but she talks a lot about the law of sufficiency instead of the law of abundance, and just like what's enough. Because if you always live in the state of more, you will have millions and millions of dollars, and you will still want more and more and more and more to be happy. And I think Michael Singer said it like, you're like looking at the grass is greener over here, or the grass is greener over here, and not realizing you are the grass. You are the blade of grass.
Yeah.
So
I love
it doesn't matter.
That's a very yogi teaching.
Yeah.
Yes.
He's a
I
big
am
yogi.
one. I love the Ram Dass. I've been quoting that for a couple weeks now, which is the things you don't need. You don't need loneliness because you can never be alone. And you said that today. You don't need greed because you have it all. So in the meditations, I'd been taught from one of my gurus to be it all. You're one with the mountains, you're one with the horses, you're one with all the material creation. So how could you want it? If you are the grass, how could you want the grass? Yeah. And you don't need doubt because you already know.
Yeah, I mean, and for sure, this is a Western thing. We're talking about, there are people in Ethiopia and people right now in Syria and Palestine and Ukraine that like don't have enough. They don't have sufficiency, right? They don't have these things. But here in the United States, we have access to running water.
Yeah.
All of the time. We have access to the internet. You can go, if you're homeless, you can still go into the public library.
Yeah.
Read a book, have use the toilet, like all of those things. Not saying that we can't like help those people in our community more, instead of building storage units, build housing for the homeless, but for the Western person, on the whole, most of the people live in lack of some kind when they have an excess. And I think that's where
it's fascinating. One of the teachers I like to listen to online, I was listening to her on a podcast yesterday too, and she was saying, this manifestation and abundance crap is old news. Like, stop it. Like, yes, we've already learned. You can think about this and manifest that thing, and it can happen quickly. But there's something bigger going on here, in your alignment and your purpose and what you're supposed to be doing. So,
yeah.
Like, you've learned that, so good. Move on.
Not everyone's purpose is here to come down and make millions of dollars.
It's not. And when you can really do some work to define that success, like you said, for yourself, then don't box it in.
Yeah.
Then don't say, and I saw this on the socials, and I don't have a reference for where it came from, but I keep quoting it to people I've been talking to see how they react. And I'm like, you know what I heard? And they're like, what? I'm like, when the path set before you is clear, it's probably not your path. And maybe some of our listeners know who said that and saw it out there in the quote. So message me and tell me who to give credit to.
It sounds like Rumi, but
I know it could have been something like that, or Carl Jung. Mm-hmm. So message me and I'll give it its due credit. But I keep saying that to people to say, do you understand? Do you know what that means? Like, are you on the same wavelength as me? Like, it was such a big aha moment for me and change for me, even in the last year, to say, yes, when all of these paradigms are laid out before you, it means it's been done before and it's somebody's way and they're useful tools. But they're probably incomplete, and it can't ultimately be your way because someone else just wrote it.
Yeah.
You didn't. So
Yeah.
So what is that? And I think you're just such a beautiful example in every area of your life of that. Maybe it's all the fire of just writing that for yourself and actualizing on those things, because it takes a lot of effort and bravery and grounding. We know this work, right? So it's not lost on me that you've actualized on a lot of these things that are created from nothing. You're so awesome. It's so exciting and inspiring, I guess.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, the last thing I wanted everyone to hear, because it helped me so much today when you said the difference between judgment and discernment. And I think that is also a beautiful thing in everything that we've talked about as you're weaving through this path. We learn together, right? And we experience the universe through each other. So this is how it's all coming about. And so there are going to be, like you said, some hard lessons and some friction and some learning how to move through that. Ultimately, at least for me, my goal is to do that with more grace and compassion and in a more open-hearted way every single day. So this point that you were talking about, I wonder if you'd be willing to share with us kind of that paradigm of empathy versus compassion and how you get to a place of compassion with discernment instead of judgment.
Yeah. And I mean, listen, none of us are perfect with any of this, right? So it's the teacher's always the student, and that's where, like, I always, and I'll say this too because we talked about it, is to always have two mentors of people, like, to help me see things that I can't see, and then have, like, my peer group of people who just, I get to be myself and love them, and then two people you're mentoring, and that keeps it in a really good balance of, like, not getting in your ego, because your mentors are gonna, like, you know.
Yeah, you're gonna be humbled.
And if you're only mentoring, then you're always like, oh my gosh, I'm so amazing.
Yeah.
And all your friends, of course, think you're amazing. That's why they're your friends. And so sometimes you need the mentor to be like, you are amazing, and there's still 95% under there that, like, you don't know about. So
and I see it, and I'm going to tell you, I'm with you.
Well, I want you to see it, and I'm going to hold gentle compassion while you see it. So, you know, I did hair for 20 years. I was very much a people pleaser. It's kind of a cultural trait in the industry of, like, people getting into hair and like doing, like, coming in early and staying late and just, like, not having, like, a lot of boundaries with it, to the point of exhaustion, to the point of, like, I had to actually quit doing hair because my body was like, no, like, you're not, my body was in so much pain, like, you cannot do this anymore. And I kept wanting to try to cut back, but, like, I couldn't. I just didn't have enough boundaries at the time. And I grew up with a lot of severe trauma, and, like, being a people pleaser was, like, life or death for me. Like, if I wasn't a people pleaser, if I wasn't loved, I was not going to get fed or paid attention to. Like, in my mind, that's what was real for me. So it did feel like death to become not a people pleaser. But one of my mentors, this is why we have mentors, right, really gave me this best example of compassion versus empathy. And empathy is, you're in the mud with them. Oh my gosh, I know, right? I'm so sorry, your husband's a jerk. You know, you're just, like, in the shit with them, and, like, feeling the vibration, and you're just like, and but really what that does is, like, you're telling them, you're keeping them in their victim. And so it's not loving. And
not if it continues on and that's all there is, right? Yeah,
because you're telling them that, like, their life is over and that they aren't anything without their husband, and how dare he do that to you, and you're a victim, instead of, like, so, like, another one of my mentors really taught me that love has a don't stop and a no as well. So sometimes saying no, or saying, you know, I'm not going to support you in your story of you being a victim. That can feel unloving to the person receiving it, but to really truly be loving is you don't want to help them subscribe to this model that doesn't help them get out of the mud. So, like, I'm not getting in the mud with you. I'm going to just be by the mud and be like, hey, if you want a handout, I'll happily help you out, but I'm not getting in the mud with you. And so how they described it to me, that, and I love stories and metaphors, because people learn better through stories, you know. And so they said, okay, a tiger wants to go to lunch with you, and you're like,
you're what, a baby lamb?
Yeah, well, you're just like a human, right? So you're like, I'm a human and you're a tiger, and they're like, let's go to lunch. And you're like, wait, but if I get there, then the tiger's going to be hungry because we're at the restaurant, and what if they want to eat meat? Because tigers eat meat. sometimes tigers eat meat, and I'm meat. So, and then you're like, but I have to protect myself, so I might have to kill the tiger. So compassion is like, I still value you. I still value that you're a tiger, or I value that you're a narcissist, or I value that you're whatever, right? Whoops. But I also have compassion for me. And I'm like, why would I put myself in that situation? I'm valuable. I value me. Empathy is like, you don't value yourself, and you also really don't value the other person. You're just in the shit with them. So you're just like, oh, that sucks. That's so bad. Like, almost kind of staying in victim. Mm-hmm. Whereas, like, compassion is like, that story isn't helpful for you. And, like, my sister was like, both of my sisters are in this work in a very deep way. And they're like, April, you're being a victim to your business partner. You're blaming everything on him. That's not helping you. I'm not going to help subscribe to that. And that was really the thing that really helped me. They had compassion for my situation, but they're like, you're the one still choosing to stay in this for 7 years. So at some point, you got to take responsibility. You're still in this, and you have choice. And I'm not going to pretend that you don't have choice, because you do. And I want to support you in belief that you do have choice. And so having compassion is valuing the other person, valuing yourself. And then discernment is, so you're not judging them like, oh, I can't believe they're a tiger and they eat people. How dare they? Like, that's just what tigers do. That's just what narcissists do. I'm sorry. That's just what narcissists do. Everything's about them. Mm-hmm. But you're choosing to stay in a relationship with a narcissist. So that's you. Right? So at some point, there's that, like, responsibility and that sovereignty of, like, oh, I'm choosing this. And then once you are in choice, you're like, oh, I've been choosing this. I can choose something different. I don't have to choose this anymore. And then you work through the people-pleasing, the death, like, oh, my gosh, if they don't like me, it means this, it means this. And it's like, that's all the inner child shadow work of, like, okay, well, now I get to work with my little girl. Like, they like you. I'll be there for you. Mm-hmm. I will love you. I will contain you. I will, you like love her and put her to bed, but she doesn't get to drive the car anymore.
And I love that when you had completed the metaphor, it was like, so instead of like the judgment and the hate and the perceived like emotion, like emotional charge surrounding the tiger, you're just like, I get it, you're a tiger. And out of compassion, it's best that we don't go to dinner together, but that's just a discernment thing. Mm-hmm. That's not a like, you're evil and I'm good. And yeah,
it's just like, this isn't good for me.
Yeah.
And it's not good for you.
Yeah.
So, like, I don't want to be friends with someone who's in victim mentality when I'm not. I'm in my queen. So I want to be around people who are in their queen. Unless we're in a different situation where you are wanting to get into your queen and then you want help and a model.
Yeah.
Then that's different. But
and then I'll be
you
your
just
coach.
I'm not gonna like
yeah.
Or even however that looks, like but like I'm not gonna go to dinner with you for 5 hours and just have you dump all over me.
Yeah.
Because that's not having compassion for myself.
And I think to add a little more context and compassion and empathy for your story you started with, without those boundaries in the hairdressing industry, is because you also have your psychology degree.
Yeah.
So this is like, I know you guys can probably, if you're watching it or even listening, can already tell that you love April and want to be there, and how easy it would be to have her do your hair and then just never leave that chair. Yeah. Just be like, well, I'm stuck here now. Keep giving. Like, yeah, that's huge.
Yeah.
That's huge to find that for yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was.
And to reclaim that, wow. And how much, and it's just, it sounds so powerful when you talk about it. Like, I'm feeling like permissive and inspired and powerful because of that sharing.
Good.
From you being that. So thank you for that. I really wanted them to hear that. So I'm really glad you shared because it's just something to mull over and ponder, pass through your intuition. I know in our world, there are some different thoughts on it. I know the leading experts in trauma and things do say that empathy is a necessary part of being seen and witnessed, and we can help ourselves, we can support people while they're on the journey of doing that for themselves, like ultimately teaching them how to see and witness themselves in that. And so there is a period of time where a support or a healer or whatever you want to call somebody can be near-ish the mud with you and say, that is really hard.
Yeah.
Like, you are seen, and that may be the one thing that finally turns the key. Like, it's possible to be seen in that. Like, it's possible for someone to sit down with you and go, April, that is hard. You have been abused. You have been gaslighted. It feels bad. It feels icky. I know what that feels like. It's just,
yeah.
Right? Like, and let me show you a way out.
Yeah. And that's still, I think, compassion. I guess, like how you're marrying it is like, you're having empathy with them. Like, I've been there.
Yes.
But then you're also like carrying them and being like, but there's a way out.
Right.
And at some point when you're in your 40s, and trust me, I had a lot of sexual abuse, I had a lot of childhood trauma. Like, there was a period where, like, I blamed, because I had this life, right? And it was only when I saw other people who didn't help me stay in that, like, of course you should be like this happened to you, and this happened to you, instead of like, well, yeah, but you're 40 now.
Yeah.
So are you, when are you going to live your life for you?
Choice. Yeah. And that's powerful. I posted something on the grams today about the divine feminine, and I posted it and was like, wow, because really what I was thinking was, how can I be that more minutes of the day? I want that. I want to know that. I want to be that. I want to teach that. And it was about a special power the divine feminine has for calling that out. It's one of our powers for holding that boundary and not being codependent and enabling, but also standing in that, saying, and now you're done with your drinking problem. Like, and now you're 40 and you have a choice. Like, there's some sort of that righteous power that the divine feminine, what did it say? You have to go check it out and see. But it was like she is the one who can, like, call up the king and the warrior and create that. And it's not, like you said, by getting down in the mud, sitting down,
but
making a bed there.
Being gentle,
there is some inspirational quality. And I feel that when you talk about these things that you've learned and embodied, so very inspiring. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Before
we end, is there anything left on your heart? Is there any, like, message or something you're going through or feel like sharing?
Yeah, I'll share my favorite quote. Okay. So I just always tell people, because I've watched podcasts and YouTube videos and, like, been a seeker for years, just like, how much information can I get, right? And it was a lot of time of me wanting to fix myself so that I would be lovable, so that I'd be worthy, so that I would be healed. And instead, and I heard this quote from Peter Crone. I love Peter Crone. He's the mind architect. He said, and it changed my life. I say it to so many of my coaching clients, is everything happened the way it was supposed to happen. And how do I know? Because that's what happened. And it couldn't have happened any other way, because it didn't. And it's just like, your process is your process. It takes as long as it takes. And you're an infinite being, and there is no getting there. And that's, like, the big illusion that I feel like people are trying to sell you. Or maybe that's how I perceived it from my place of judgment, and now I have discernment that, like, there is no getting there. You are here now in this present moment, perfect, whole, complete, and have everything you need, even with all the faults and the mess and the chaos that you've created. Even if you're an alcoholic, even if you're addicted to drugs, even if you're whatever, it's all divinely orchestrated. Like, in this moment, you are whole, complete, and perfect, just as you are. And I think the chasing of that is what creates the hustle and the chaos, instead of just the acceptance of, like, what is. So, yeah.
I love that.
That quote changed my life.
That is amazing. That's beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
That really resonates with me. I love that. It's sort of a remembrance, and you are whole. And you'll never experience that moment of samadhi or peace, or whatever you want to call it for you, until you stop searching for it. So that's a fun paradigm to meditate on. So how can they follow you and get a hold of you? I know you're not huge on social media and the things, but what's the best way for people to see what's going on?
Yeah, I mean, I do have an Instagram account, so I do check it regularly. I just am not, like, consistent about posting or the algorithms, or I don't use it strategically. I do have a website.
What's that called, the Instagram?
My Instagram is April Benincosa, and my website's just aprilbenincosa.com. So I list my retreats on there. So I'll have one in Sedona, one in Versailles, and one in Scotland next year, and then Egypt will be 2025, and Japan.
Cool.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. I really enjoyed today.
That was so lovely. Me too. Satnam.
Thank you for listening. Connect with me on Instagram at Crystal Zinn Yoga. Subscribe on my website at crystalzinnyoga.com to receive tools and practices for your holistic journey and to be the first to know about offerings, workshops, trainings, and retreats. We live in powerful times that require courage, bravery, compassion, authenticity, community, and grounding. You're not alone. Check out my free content, classes, and meditations on YouTube under Crystal Zinn Yoga and have a beautiful day. Satnam.